Well, folks, it's just after 6:30, and what's changed? Absolutely nothing. Uh, to the south, as you can see, members of the media are assembling, and further beyond them, those trucks are still on the tracks. Apparently, their engines are still running. So it's been an entire night where nothing has happened. I see maybe a couple of OPP cruisers, a few football fields down the road, but in terms of enforcing the law, in terms of acting upon that court order, nothing happened overnight. And here we are in the morning waiting for something to occur to end this ridiculous charade, to stop this illegal, illicit blockage of the railroad tracks. And situation abnormal, same old, same old. Well, folks, we have some movement on the ground. It is a little after 8 a.m. and behind me I see a legion of what appears to be law enforcement vehicles. They are coming down the road right now, and maybe this is the end game. Let's see what happens. So, folks, clearly law enforcement has arrived. There must be more than 20 or 30 vehicles here. Some of the officers I've observed are heavily armed, and right now they're talking to the protesters. I reached out for a comment to one of the OPP officers here, and I was told by another officer there would be no comment, at least not yet. And it's a little difficult to see with all the law enforcement vans what is going on at the blockade. They're preventing the media from getting any closer, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Well, folks, law enforcement has been on the scene for about half an hour now. From our vantage point, it is impossible to hear what's being negotiated with the protesters. The media have been kept back by about 3 football fields. Did see one protester thrown to the ground and handcuffed and arrested. And certainly law enforcement has come loaded for bear today. There are several police cruisers, police SUVs, there's an armored vehicle, there's an ambulance just in case anything happens, and several members of law enforcement are very heavily armed, I guess expecting the worst while hoping for the best. In any event, this does appear to be the end game. I guess it's only a matter of time before the protesters are removed from the tracks, either peacefully or the hard way. Folks, it is now 11:30 a.m. and as you might be able to see behind me, there are now CN trucks and CN workers on the track. This is in spite of the fact that police are still negotiating with some of the protesters, at least those protesters that weren't hauled away in vans. I would say that this is an optimistic sight, because obviously the workers are inspecting the tracks, getting ready for those trains to roll, and they're not wasting any time. And can you blame them? Look how many millions of dollars these radicals have cost the Canadian economy already. Well, as you just saw, another paddy wagon filled with protesters departed the area. They put on a bit of a show for the cameras, doing chanting and screaming and whatnot. We've heard that there's about 10 to 12 people that have been arrested so far. That hasn't been confirmed, but nevertheless, the OPP has issued a statement. The OPP notes that it has exhausted all other means of resolving this issue, and, quote, the OPP has a legal responsibility to enforce the injunction, end quote. Well, that is indeed the case, but this injunction has been here for weeks, and the question is the timeline. Why wasn't the injunction enforced when it was originally issued? I and others are of the opinion that, contrary to what Justin Trudeau was preaching for the last several days this month, that more dialogue was needed, once a court order is issued, that is when the dialogue ends. There's nothing more to be said. The court has decided that the people were in violation of the law and the law has to be enforced. Finally, it is being enforced. So I guess if there's a silver lining here, folks, better late than never. Well, folks, it's just afternoon. In other words, a solid 12 hours after that midnight deadline. And a couple of heavy tows have just rolled up. Now, I'm not sure if the vehicles the protesters are using are immobile or that they simply won't move them and won't surrender the keys. No matter, these tow trucks will take care of that little impediment. It is yet another sign that things are slowly but surely returning to normal. Well, folks, as you just saw, we now know what that heavy tow and flatbed truck were needed for. Namely, it was to remove that snowplow that's been parked near the railroad tracks for almost 3 weeks now. Interestingly, they had to amputate the plow part of the snowplow and put that on the flatbed truck. And that's the plow that you may recall that the hereditary chiefs signed their signatures to, and I guess a show of solidarity. So I guess at the end of the day, this protest, which was probably always doomed for failure, it ends with a whimper, not with a bang, as the dismantled snowplow is removed from the site and the remaining stragglers, they're next to go. And then the inevitable cleanup begins. After that, CN workers will ensure that the tracks are indeed safe for the trains to run, and situation will go back to normal. Finally. Well, folks, I'm at the second protest site here in Tyandiega. It's a much smaller protest, and law enforcement continues to have discussions with the stragglers who remain here. I have to tell you, from my little perch here on the bridge, I was indeed recognized, and many of the protesters started chanting rebel news and a word following that begins with the letter F and ends with UCK, and I'm not talking fire truck. But seriously, folks, this whole debacle has been a fiasco from day one. It is just downright shameful that this charade has been allowed to continue for as long as it did. Hopefully now we have one law for everyone, but I wouldn't bet on it. For Rebel News, I'm David the Menzoid Menzies. Hey folks, have you heard? Rebel News is going on a cruise. Please go to rebelnewscruise.com, find out all the details, and I hope to see you on the ship as we head north to Alaska in July.